Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. This is the first in our series of Chef Look Cooks, starring my wonderful colleague and even more wonderful chef, Christopher Look. I will let Chris describe what he's going to cook tonight, but I just want to welcome you all to this first show and let you know that not only is Chris cooking, demonstrating a recipe, it's more than that. He is going to be teaching us something of, many things: knife technique, spicing, oven technique, lots of things. It's really a cooking class. And I'm just delighted that he's willing to do that for us. So I'm going to let him take it away. And thank you so much for coming. And you'll be able to ask questions using the chat during the program. And afterwards, you can turn off your mic. Turn on your mic and ask questions then. Welcome. Chris, it's all yours.
All right, cool. Hey, thanks, Virginia. So today we're going to cook a wonderful dish from Smitten Kitchen. It's a fabulous harvest roast chicken with grapes and olives. My partner actually made this dish for me a long time ago, and I fell in love with it. It's super easy. It takes like no time at all. You just need to basically cook the chicken in the pan, and then you throw it in the oven, let it finish roasting with grapes and olives. They sort of cook down into this like beautiful like jelly, and it's just salty and sweet and delicious. Absolutely fabulous. One of my quickest and most favorite dishes to do, and it's just absolutely perfect for a quick dinner. You can buy the chicken pieces yourself, or you can break down a chicken, which is what we're going to try and do today, just to sort of get the knowledge out there. But honestly, buying chicken thighs and just throwing them in the pan is the easiest and pretty economical way to do this on pretty much any weekend night or weekday night you need dinner. Let's just make sure you get it. What it means basically is that everything is in its place. So if you can see here, I've got my shallots and my broth and my wine and my grapes all right here. That's all the chicken stuff. There's the chicken, of course. So that's all right in front of me. And then I'm going to make a little slaw side to go with this, a little sweet slaw, just because I really like slaw and I have this cabbage going bad in my fridge. So I've got all the slaw ingredients there. And what that does is it means I don't have to move from this corner of my kitchen for the whole time that I'm cooking. It's really nice. It helps let you do things that are really fast paced. I can be cooking the chicken and cutting stuff from the slaw and talking to you guys all at the same time, because everything I need is right in front of me. I don't have to go looking for things. So mise en place, it's really great. I highly recommend incorporating it. It takes a little bit of time before you start cooking, but it changes your life. It makes things a lot easier and it lets you do things you never thought you could do before. So without further ado, let's get into this chicken. So I bought a nice whole chicken, biggest one I could find. I like big chickens. I have a big cast iron pan. So we are going to we're going to fill that baby up with chickens, but make sure this angle is nice. Looks pretty good to me. I usually like to pull things off the chicken, so we're going to get a high angle there. So chickens are pretty simple. A lot of people like to wear gloves. You don't have to. Just make sure you wash your hands. And realistically, most chickens are pretty safe nowadays, so it's not something you have to worry about. But if you are worried, wear gloves. Definitely wash your hands afterwards. Wash your cutting board, whatever you want to do to feel comfortable when you're working with raw chicken. But just a quick sort of run through of the chicken. The different pieces we're going to be taking off are this wing, and you can already see it's kind of coming off already. We're going to be going at this joint right here. You're always looking for joints with chicken. They don't really have very strong bones, but you want to avoid them if possible. You've got the thigh and legs right here. Okay, let's pull this up a little bit. Perfect. So you got the thigh and legs right here. And then, of course, everyone's sort of favorite part is the breasts up in here. And so chickens are really great. They have these lines. I don't know if you can see it on there, but next time you get a raw chicken, look for it. Right in the pit there, there's this fat line. That's actually where we're going to be cutting later, which is really nice. They really just tell you exactly where you want to go. So depending on your chicken, they might be a little bit tough if they've been frozen or whatever. So you want to kind of give them a little loosen up before you start cutting. It really helps to sort of let you get to the areas you need to. This chicken's incredibly loose, so I'm not too worried about it. So we're going to jump right in. People like to start in different places, but I personally like to start with the wings. They're really big and long. They get in the way. So I think by getting them out of the way, it just helps me deal with the rest of the bird. So when you're going after the wing, I like to put it breast side down, so you're looking at its back. Back, yeah, that's right. Chickens are weird. Anyways, and then you just want to feel around, and you should be able to push sort of into its shoulder, like you're sort of giving a loved one a massage, maybe. And you should be able to feel where the bone meets the bird. And you're going to take your knife and you're going to want to try and cut right towards that. You might run into something hard, which is totally fine. Once you cut to that bone, you'll be able to sort of just peel it out. And you can see, hopefully, yeah, right there. There's a little ball joint right there, and so you should be able to get your knife on the other side of that ball joint. And then once you're on the other side, there's no bones. You can just cut back out towards the skin. And you don't want to cut down here, because if you cut down, you'll get into the breast. As soon as you're through that ball joint, you want to sort of turn your knife. I know it's kind of hard to cut towards yourself, but you want to pull that wing taut and then sort of cut back towards yourself. And just be careful. Really sharp knife is super helpful in this situation. And that way you won't get any breast on your wing, and you'll have nice big breast for later. So that's your first wing. I'm just going to put it over here to the side. We'll do the other one the same. I like to keep it close to me, so I'll spin my chicken around. Again, you just want to feel for that joint. You want to cut into it. You want to give it a little twist, sort of pop it out, and so you can get around it. And if you need to, you can always make another cut. This one's, of course, being difficult with me. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes, there we go. So I just hadn't popped it out of the socket there. And again, you want to make sure you cut away from the breast so you save that meat. There's your second wing. So once the wings are gone, it's a lot easier to deal with. It doesn't have big things flapping around. So you want to flip it around. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the thighs, make it even more streamlined so we can attack those breasts. And like I was saying earlier, the thighs have this really nice fat line. And if you lay the bird like this and it's loose, it'll actually sort of just show right up. You can see the lines going right here. And so what you're going to do is you're gonna just make an incision just like that, just straight down. That's going to open it up, and it's going to show you this whole thigh. If you take a look in there, you've got the whole thigh here. That's the part of the breast you can see. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to continue this cut around all the way to the back. And the back here is a really important muscle. This is called the oyster. It is sort of like the tenderloin of the chicken. It's one of the best parts on the whole chicken. And this thigh cut is where you're going to want to take it off of the chicken. And so what you're going to want to do is you've cut the skin now right back to that point. You can actually sort of see it. You can feel it. If you squish it together, there's these two little nodules right there at the back. Those are the oysters. You want to make sure you get those. So you take that skin cut right back to the tip of the oyster. And then at this point, it should be nice and loose. You should be able to just pop the bone right out of the socket. Chickens don't have a lot of strong bones, so it's very easy to do that. Once that's done, it's pretty easy to manipulate. You can just come in here and cut right along the bottom of that oyster. You want to make sure you get as much of it as you can. It is really, really good eats. And this is easier on bigger birds, or if you're doing something like a turkey, comes right off. And then with that bone cut up, separated, you should just be able to almost let the chicken hang and then just cut right along this bottom bone here. This is the butt bone. And if you just sort of put your knife right on that and cut, you'll get a really nice clean cut. Let gravity be your friend here. That'll help you to just cut it all off. Get a nice big chunk of pretty much just fat, which is great because that's a lot of nice flavor. And that'll help add to our sauce later when we're making the sauce for this dish. So you're going to do basically the same thing on the other leg. You're just going to sort of let it hang flat. There's that nice fat line right there. You can see you're just going to cut right along that line. That's going to pierce your skin. You're going to hang it up. Didn't cut all the way through the belly. You're going to sort of let gravity do your work for you. You're going to follow that skin line back to this back muscle, this oyster. Then you're going to pop the joint right there. And this one's actually a little bit easier because you're using the tip of the knife. And you're just going to cut in there, get that oyster, get as much of it as you can. I usually take a little bit longer on this when I'm cooking for myself, but usually it's pretty easy to just cut it right out. And then again, you just want to follow the line of that bone, and you can usually feel it with your knife. Don't cut too hard. It should be pretty easy. If you're cutting through bone, that's okay. You can always pick it out later. But you should be able to get a pretty good piece of muscle with no bone in there. And that's our next thigh. And you can cut these up if you want. What I'll do is I'll leave one whole. I personally for this dish like the whole piece. It's kind of like one person's meal. But if you're portioning for smaller kids or something like that, you can actually cut the thigh up. And so this is the leg bone and then the thigh. And there's a little joint right there. You can actually cut through this joint. It's pretty soft. But again, the chicken's going to tell you exactly where to cut. If you spread the skin nice and tight around the leg, there's another line right here. Hopefully you can see it on this. I don't know what the quality is like. There's a little line where the skin sort of goes from feathery to smooth. And that's that. Hopefully, if you pull it tight, if you follow that straight down, you should go right through the joint, no problem. And that joint's pretty weak anyway, so even if you don't hit it right, usually you can cut through that bone. But again, pull the skin tight, and you'll see like a coloration change between the thickness of the thigh and this sort of more bony legs. And if you cut right on that line, you're almost guaranteed to hit that joint perfectly every time. So then now we get to sort of the harder part. Some people, if you're using like a really sharp, thin knife like I am, you might want to switch to a thicker knife. I happen to know this knife can take it, so I'm going to go for it. So we're going to look back, and that the bird's going to have these fat lines again. Those are the same ones we looked at when we were cutting the thighs off. They're at the bottom of the breast. There's one on each side. So we're going to follow those lines with our knife. And what we're doing now is we're trying to cut the back off. So we're just going to follow those lines, and you will hit bone here. You're going to hit ribs. This is why you're going to want to switch to a stronger knife if you need to. Some thin knives aren't so good. So I'm literally just cut through all the ribs. They're not that strong. Be careful you don't do what I did. You don't cut into the breast there. So once you get through all the ribs, you should be able to sort of cut through this breast. And the last thing you need to do, there are these two parts of the wing bones, basically. They're connected to the neck. And there are a lot of different ways to get it out. I personally just like to snap it out like that. You can see there's sort of the end of one of them right there. And once you snap those out, you can just take a little cut. You've got everything. You've got the whole neck. You've got the back. This makes a really good stock. Just save it with the innards. You can make a beautiful chicken stock. We're actually using chicken stock in this recipe. So, you know, if you wanted to, you could break the chicken down the night before and then and make a stock overnight. Do like a really slow boil, make a really, really nice fresh chicken stock to use in your dish. That way you don't even have to buy some. So then the last thing you have is you've got both your breasts together. This is actually a really nice roast. You can just roast it just like this. Salt and pepper in a pan like that and just let it go to town. That's a really great, easy dinner if you wanted to use these for like the dish or something. But we're going to split it for tonight so that we can sort of portion it out easier. And the way you do that, again, chicken bones are really soft. So you're going to want to find the center part. You can see there's sort of two little bones there and then this little tailbone here. So you're going to want to find the center of that. You're going to put your knife in there and you just, again, use a stronger knife if you want. I happen to know this knife can take it, so I'm going to use it. You just want to hit it with the end of the palm of your hand. If you cut your ribs right, there shouldn't be any ribs here, but do be careful. Sometimes there'll be a little rib sticking out and you can get yourself. So just make sure that's safe. And then once you get through the thick muscle here, you should be right into flesh. You should be able to just finish that cut. And once you do that, we will have two beautiful skin on chicken breasts. You can also, if you want to, take this bone off before we split that. You could have sort of set it up this way and come at it from the side and sort of filleted off and taken the tender out. But for this dish especially, we're going to be roasting it at a really high temperature. So we're going to want to keep those bones on there to help keep the chicken moist, give it a little bit of extra moisture and flavor. So that's breaking up a chicken. It's easier once you've done it. Just remember that it's always chicken. So even if you mess it up, you can still cook it. It's going to get really tender and nice. You just might have to do a little more picking when you bring it to the table. But it's worth experimenting. It's a lot of fun doing your own chicken. It's way, way, way cheaper, and you get a lot of great backup stuff to use for stocks and such. So I'm just gonna wash my hands, get all that gushy chicken off, and then we're gonna season this, and we're gonna get it seared off so we can start baking it in the oven. So I'm just gonna turn up my oven. I'm using electric, so I don't have the best heat control, but I really hope we're gonna get these seared off perfectly. It's another great trick is always have like a little towel with yourself. Wash your hands, only touch it with clean stuff. It just helps to keep yourself clean. All right, so let's take this chicken over here. And we're just gonna pretty vigorously salt and pepper this. We wanna make sure that it tastes good. The olives are gonna be super salty, but the chicken broth and the wine that we add are not gonna have any salt added to them. And we can always season it again later if we want to, but seasoning before cooking is usually the best for chicken. And make sure you get even the bone sides. You just want to get as much salt in there as you can. And you can use less salt if you want. Like I said, the olives are going to be salty. So it's not essential that you put tons of salt on here, but I like a lot of salt. definitely a flavor centric dude. Okay, sweet. And we're gonna do some pepper too. I'm just gonna do pepper on the bottom side. I feel like whenever I put it on the skin, it ends up kind of getting burnt and it gets a little bitter, and I'm not really into that. So I'm just gonna put it on the bottom side because we're gonna cook the skin side down first, and that's really the side that's gonna get the most heat. Once we flip it over, we're really just sort of trying to spread that heat all the way through the chicken so that when we put it in the oven, it cooks nice and evenly. You're not dealing with like one hot side, one cold side, sort of fighting with each other. But the skin side is going to take the most punishment right now. So I'm just going to season with pepper on the non-skin side, just to try and make it so it doesn't burn. Burnt pepper is really good. I do like burning things. If you guys have watched my grill session, I'm a big fan of burnt. And so I'm going to put more pepper on the backside just because I'm not putting it on the skin side. And then when we go to make the sauce, some of that will have come off in the pan. It'll help season the sauce. Everything will be absolutely perfect. Sweet. So I'm actually going to take this out of the way. Again, another nice little trick is use a cloth whenever you're doing something like chicken with a lot of blood potential. That was actually really nice. It was pretty clean. So there wasn't a lot of cleanup, but now I don't have to worry about blood on my counters. I can just move right into whatever I want to cut next, which is really nice. So sweet. While this heats up, I'm a big fan of keeping busy all the time. But right now we're actually in a good spot where it's not too loud. So if anybody has any questions to start off, now's the time. Does anybody have anything they wanted to ask? Bill, I don't see anything in the chat. That's perfectly cool. I am going to just jump into the next part of my prep. So I was going to do a lot of this prep while these chickens were in the oven. But whenever I can find time in the kitchen, I'm always trying to do something just to sort of make my life easier. Actually, that's right. I need the shallots. I didn't memorize this recipe well enough. So actually, this is totally to do with what we're doing right now. We need to do these shallots for the pan. Ooh, that's getting nice and hot. Awesome. So what I did is I just took the top and the bottom off. You can keep the root end on if you want. It can make it easier to cut if you're trying to do like a really small shallot cut, but I'm not too concerned with the size. I actually like big chunks of shallots. If you're not familiar with cooking with shallots, they're kind of like a really flavor-packed red onion. Like imagine like the nice sort of like laid back, mellow flavor of a red onion, but just like times 10. They're sweet. They don't have as much like really intense oniony flavor like a raw onion might. I mean, they do, but it's not super bad. They're just a very nice, more mild flavor. And when you cook them like we're about to cook them, oh yeah, that's going to town. All right, cool. So let's turn this down a little bit, get it ready. So I'm using some bacon fat. Let's see, can you see me cooking the chicken over there? Yeah, it looks like you can. Awesome. Cool. I'm going to put us a little closer just so you guys can see it even better. And that's getting nice and smoky, probably too smoky. I'm actually going to take it off the heat a little bit. So I'm going to use some bacon fat. I just rendered this out and saved it over months. I always tend to eat more bacon than I use bacon fat. I really like this for like braised cabbage dishes. It's good to just cook your eggs in if you want. You know, you can't go wrong. You don't need a lot. You really just want to get have enough in there to get the pan started. Huh, where's my? Oh well, not everything mise en place. Haha, I found it. These are really great for cast irons if you ever cook with cast irons. You just want enough to sort of get it started. The chicken skin's going to release plenty of fat itself, but I never really complain about a little extra flavor, especially when it's bacon flavor. Sorry, guys.
We actually joked about this happening because Chris is fireman.
I have super sensitive fire. I have super sensitive fire alarms in the house, so it is perfectly okay though. That little sucker just does that all the time. I'm actually going to tell me how this sounds for Virginia.
Matt said this happens to him all the time.
Is the fan very bad?
No, it's fine.
All right, cool. We're gonna leave the fan on then. Cool. All right, sweet. So with that, I'm gonna start with the breasts because I think they're gonna take the longest. And we're just gonna place them right in the pan, skin side down. Try not to crowd the pan. And then let's see, that's gonna be the next batch. Let's put one of the legs in there. That should allow us to have a perfect size batch next time. Turn that back up now that it's ready to go. And we're just gonna let that sit and get nice and crispy. Ooh, it smells good. Chicken fat is probably right up there with duck fat and bacon fat for some of my absolute favorites. All right, so shallots. Let's see, yeah, it looks like we can see everything. That looks nice. Cool. Shallots, there's a lot of different ways to cut them. I like them big, so I'm going to cut them like I do onions. I'm just going to kind of go hold them with the cut ends facing you. And then you're just going to sort of cut some strips. And then you're going to turn them so the cut ends are going out the sides. And you're going to cut those strips into cubes. And so like I said, I like big chunks. I don't mind getting a big chunk of shallot in my face. I love the flavor of them. I think they're absolutely divine. But if you are not so much about the flavor of shallots and you really just want the texture and you really want the flavor, you can do, I believe the term is a brunoise, which is basically just a small cut. And so what you want to do is you want to put your hand flat over the top like this and make sure you have your fingers curved up like that so you can't cut them. And you're going to want to push down pretty firmly and you're going to want to cut through, but only part of the way through. See that? Not all the way through. Actually, that's not more like that. And what that'll do is that'll keep a nice little spot here that will hold it together. This is a good thing to do if you are going to keep those root ends on. That way you don't have to waste as much shallot because that root end is going to get composted or thrown away anyways. And so what you're doing here is you're basically sort of cutting it into little sections, and that means that your pieces are going to be smaller. You're cutting these long strips that are eventually going to be smaller. Then you're going to come back and you're going to cut it into little strips this way. Keep it nice and small if you can. This is a lot easier with the root end on, but what you're basically doing here is you're sort of making it into a bunch of little tiny julienne sticks, but they're all still connected at that one end. What that lets you do is it lets you come back over here, hold those little sticks together, and then cut real tiny, and you get a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tiny dice. This is really useful if you're making like a mignonette for oysters. I don't know if you guys like oysters. I'm a big fan of oysters. So just a sort of difference here of my rough chop, lots of big pieces. I like that versus a decent brunoise. You know, it's tiny, it's not going to get in your mouth, but it's still going to lend probably more of its flavor than it would if you had just cut it large like I do. But like I said, I like chunky. So I'm going to do it chunky, but feel free to do it as small as you want. And you could also do it in a food processor if you really don't feel comfortable with doing that much cutting. Turn this guy down a little bit. This is the one problem with using electric. It's very hard to control your heat level. There's usually a magic space. You get nice and crispy. That's good. These are very big breasts. All right, cool. So we're going to cut up the rest of the shallot. I'm going to do it nice and big like I like it, but again, cook it how you like it. Oh yeah. Okay, that chicken's probably good. Probably a little darker than I like it, but this breast can take it. It's a big piece. I'm gonna flip that guy over. That's getting a little crazy. There we go. That one's a little better. As you can see, just a nice crispy skin piece right there. Let me get that a little closer for you. Not perfect, but hey, I never claim to be perfect. Yeah, that one's good. And again, I like burnt stuff, so this is gonna be perfect for me. But it might be a little darker than you, and if that's the case, just make sure you turn it down a little bit more. But that's a nice little crispy skin that we're looking for. We're just going to cook it on the other side for a couple minutes, and that's going to do is that's going to just start the cooking process on that bottom side. Get the heat attacking the core from both ends. And that means when we put it in the oven, it's going to cook a lot faster, which is the whole point. This dish, in general, should be able to be done from start to finish in half an hour, 40 minutes. So, you can come home and without really too much prep beforehand, be done. And it's obviously much faster if you're not cutting up a chicken beforehand. You're just taking pieces out of a bag or whatever you happen to have gotten at your local butcher or your grocery store. Sweet. So shallots, I already took my grapes off. I'm actually using probably way more than the recipe would normally call for, and I'm okay with that. I love grapes. I love shallots. The recipe said 2 small shallots. I did 2 large shallots. The recipe said a cup of grapes. I think I probably have a cup and a half, and I've got full cup of olives as well. So it should work out pretty good. I'm hoping. Grapes are my favorite part of this dish. So beautiful. So from anybody who watched me do my grilling demo, comment that I really couldn't stop making was that in my downtime, I really enjoy having a nice drink to sort of pass the time while things cook. And so today, I have come prepared. Water is always good. Ice water is particularly nice. I'm a big fan of ice water when I'm cooking. Keeps my energy level up. But sometimes a good beer is all you need after a long day of work. And you can just hear the chicken sizzling, nice hops. It's actually a really great seasoning too. If you've never used it before, hops are incredibly fun to use with cooking. Just be careful; they're really bitter. They're usually better as like a seasoning you're not going to eat in the end. So you don't really want to treat it necessarily like an herb. And if you do, you want to make sure you have some way to sort of counteract that intense, super intense bitterness. So the smaller piece here is definitely done. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. And these are going to get cooked again, so I feel okay putting them back on the same tray that I used with the raw chicken. Otherwise, you'd want to use a fresh tray, but I'm going to put these right back in the oven in no time, so I'm going to go ahead and use the same tray. But, again, do what makes you feel comfortable. So I'm going to put this thigh in there, skin side down. If I was going to pick one type of meat to do this with, I would probably pick thighs. They're some of my favorites. They can really put up with some very intense cooking. And more importantly, they're very fast to cook. So you could actually probably get this done in 10 minutes less than if you were using these breasts. These breasts are actually really big, and they might hold back the cooking process. But I'm going to try and just leave them in the pan here, and get them going along. I actually just put them on sort of their third side. So there was the bone side, the skin side, and then there's sort of the tender side, sort of right there. That's a nice little place where you can get some good heat into the core of that chicken. Get its cooking temp up. Faster you get that temp up, faster it's going to get cooked and be done. We really want the oven is more to sort of just finish off the core of this and to cook our grapes and our shallots. The chicken should be most of the way done before it even goes in there. It's going to just start absorbing all those flavors from the grapes and the olives while it finishes cooking. But you want to try and do as much of the cooking up top here as you can. The oven looks like it's good to go. Always worth checking that. So I'm just going to do a little bit of prep. Get my broth open. Make sure that's looking good. Perfect. Everything. That's all for when it comes out of the oven. We're going to do our sauce. I am going to probably put a little extra butter in there. Don't tell Smitten Kitchen. There's definitely going to be plenty of chicken fat, but I just really love butter in my sauces. We're going to see how it tastes. Taste always should be your first indicator as to whether you need to change something. If it tastes good, there's no need to add more, unless you just want to be extra. All right, so those chicken breasts are looking pretty good. I'm going to take them out as well. And those are really big, much bigger than I think was anticipated. If you had taken the bone off of them, they would have cooked faster, so that would also have been an option, sort of speed up your cooking process, but I think we're going to be just fine with the way they are. I'm going to put my other thigh in there, my 2 wings. Wings are secretly my favorite part of the chicken, apart from the thighs. I think thighs are best for like a dinner with family, but if I'm cooking for myself, I just want wings all the way. I love the bones. I love just like all the tendons and cartilage and crunchy bits. The little wing tips are absolutely fabulous. If you cook them really slow, or if you happen to have a fryolator at home, you can really treat yourself to a nice crispy treat. Hot sauce and butter is a great fix for that. Take a piece of this side. The chicken's really nice. And most proteins, when they start to cook, they start to firm up. That chicken was really sort of floppy and all over the place, but after a little bit of time in the pan, it's it looks nice. It's sort of solidified into its what we sort of expect to see from chicken. And this thigh is starting to do that too. And that's a really good indicator to tell when it's getting close to being done. I'm actually going to turn this heat back up. Looks like it's sort of it dropped a little bit when we put some cold stuff in the pan. I want to make sure that that gets a nice brown color to it. If it gets too crispy for your liking, that's fine. When we put it in the oven, it will really soften up. You can always toss it back in the pan with some of the pan sauces and baste it. And that will also soften up the crispy skin. Just sort of depends on what you like. I personally like crispy skin, so I'm going to do my darndest to keep this out of moisture and staying super crispy. Nice. Just checking to see if we'd had any questions yet. Feel free to ask anything. It doesn't have to be about anything that I'm talking about. It could be about absolutely anything. I'm not very good at stock tips though, so I don't think you should ask me about investing. But anything food related does not have to be about chicken. I have a fountain of knowledge, and I would love to share it with all of you.
You're very good at chicken stock, though.
Sorry, Virginia, what was that?
I said you're very good at chicken stock tips.
Yeah, chicken stock. Oh man,
that was really scary when you put your ear up like that.
Sorry, Virginia, I can't hear you, even though you can probably hear me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Zach wanted to know how fast can you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Ooh, can I make a peanut butter? How fast can you make a PB&J? I can make a PB&J in probably 15 minutes. I like my PB&J toasted, and we don't have a toaster here, so I got to wait for my oven. So I would say, as far as a good PB&J, it's going to take me some time. A little while ago, I learned from one of my friends the importance of patience in food. I was always a really fast cooker. I just move as fast as I can, trying to get things done, trying to get them on the plate so I can eat them. And I learned from one of my friends one morning. I was watching her cook, and she was just like deliberately taking her time. She was cooking on low, adding everything really slow, and everything just came together. And it took her like 45 minutes to make a really simple like breakfast scramble with some eggs. But man, when we ate it, you could just taste everything that she had done, all the layers that she had put in there, all the love she had put in there. She wasn't just trying to feed us; she was trying to make good food. And ever since that day, I've sort of, I definitely felt like it was important to really care for my food as something more than just, sustenance. So my PB&J would probably not take that long, but if I had to, I could probably whip one up right now in about a minute. But we're not going there. I'm about to have this chicken in my belly in about half an hour, so I'm not gonna throw PB&J in front of that. But proper PB&J for me is gonna be perfectly toasted bread, still warm. Gonna melt the peanut butter on it. Actually, I'll put the peanut butter on there, and then I'll put the other piece on top and let it hang out so the peanut butter sort of melts a bit. And I'll take that piece off, put jelly on the other end, and then enjoy. So definitely a bit of a process, but I like that sort of melty feeling. So don't be afraid to sort of push your meat around. The wings especially aren't going to want to stay in contact with the pan, so just press at the joints, and that'll sort of flex them back down, get them in contact with that heat, so they can get some nice crispy underbellies. Of course, my whole stove is just going to be covered in chicken fat, which is fabulous. I've often wanted a toaster, but I don't know. I like toasting in the oven. It's more intimate experience. I feel like you really have to watch it. There's no sort of set it and forget it. But I have burnt bread far too many times, so maybe I should just get myself a toaster or ask for one for Christmas. Sadly, my birthday is in June, so I'd have to wait quite a long time for a toaster. But Christmas is right around the corner. All right, beautiful. We are getting everything together. This is going to be good. We're about ready for entry into the oven. You can see that's just that one thigh all by itself. Got some nice crispy brown skin. Juices are starting to come out of it. That's what we're looking for. I'm actually going to nestle these breasts back in here right now just because I know they're going to take a while to cook. I don't know if you guys are excited, but once that chicken goes in the oven, this whole kitchen is going to get so much more quiet. It's going to be beautiful, and maybe we can have some more chatting in that experience. It's definitely, this is probably one of the most stressful parts of cooking, when you've got hot stuff on the stove, trying to make sure it doesn't burn. Everything's loud and noisy, and it's exciting for me, but I definitely understand that this is one of those parts of cooking that people don't enjoy, and if you can, get someone else to do it for you, and then you can do the fun stuff like making a sauce. Sauces are a very quiet experience, whereas I feel like cooking proteins like this tends to be very loud and aggressive. All right, I think the wings are ready to come out. We're gonna put them right back in here, but I'm just gonna make some space for my breasts. The breasts are both my biggest thing, so I'm gonna put them on opposite sides of the pan. Just make sure you tilt your pan every now and then. Get that chicken fat as a nice coating on the bottom, so your chicken doesn't stick. It shouldn't stick anyways. There's a lot of fat going on in this pan, and my cast iron, at least, is very, very well seasoned. Perfect. You can see this is that other thigh. This is the one that's all together. We've got the nice crispiness with the black pepper on the bottom. The skin's got a nice little brown color. I could go further if I want, but I think this is going to be good. And so we're going to put that back in the pan. We want to put all of our pieces back in the pan now. We want to put them skin side up. What that's going to do is that's going to help keep the skin out of the sauce that's going to start coming out of these grapes and olives. When we start to get the grape pop, they're going to pop. They're going to release their juices all over the pan. You want to sort of play this like a puzzle game if you can. The most important part of the wing to get close to the pan is going to be the thick part here with the sort of the armpit. You want to sort of shove that in there. You can leave the wing tips sort of hanging out in the pan. I'll move you guys over so you can see a little bit better too, sort of how I arrange these. And again, it's not going to be perfect. This pan's pretty big. I probably bought too big of a chicken, honestly. But hey, what are you going to do? All right, so let's just take a quick peek real quick. So I sort of jigsawed them in there. I got the two breasts. There's my thigh and bone. There's my thigh and my other leg. And my two wings are sort of just sticking out there. But I'm actually going to turn this off now, let that use residual heat. And then we're going to toss our grapes and our shallots right on top there while it's nice hot. Put the shallots in first. You want them to get closest to the heat because they need the most cooking time. Your grapes right on top. Now I've got a whole jar of Kalamata olives. I'm just going to strain off the brine there. You can save it if you want. I have literal jars of brine in my fridge though because I make a lot of Bloody Marys. We're just going to toss those on top as well. Sort of use your hands, get them in all those little cracks. You want to get them in contact with the metal pan as much as possible. When this goes in the oven, the whole pan is going to become a heat source, you know, so it's going to be cooking from all sides instead of just the bottom like it is right now. We're going to get those all in. I'm going to bring you guys over one more time just so you can sort of see what we're looking like right now. We got grapes all in there everywhere. It's going to act more as like a steam bath now. We're going to really start to render out the juices from the chicken and the grapes and everything else. And that's it. We don't actually cover that. We're just going to put that right in the oven just like that. And let it go to town. Isn't it so nice and quiet now? It's a crazy experience how different it is between cooking hot and cooking cold. So I'm just going to rinse off and use a little soap on this chicken pot. So this way, when that comes out of the oven, we can put the chicken right back on here as we make our pan sauce. Cool. So that was the sort of starting process for the chicken. So we're actually going to push you guys back here, and we're going to get started on our side dish. I really like slaws. They're probably one of my obsessions. Cabbage is just such an amazing vegetable. It's really easy to make or to grow. Even if you don't grow it, it's really cheap to buy. So you can usually find it on sale. I've been getting a lot of it in my CSA. And so I just have heads on hand all the time. I usually will braise it with bacon and maybe some like dried fruits if I can get my hands on them. But today we're gonna make a quick slaw. I think that's gonna be the best plan. I personally really like just a lot of crunchy vegetables in my slaw. We're gonna do a horseradish, like a sweet horseradish lime dressing. You could use mayonnaise, but I'm gonna use yogurt. But yeah, just without further ado, we're gonna jump right into that. Unless anybody has any more questions, let me check the chat real quick. Cool. I'm excited. Me too. All right, sweet. So cabbage, they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I don't know this particular type of cabbage, but I do recognize the shape, this low sort of squat cabbage. A lot of times you'll see them, they're more sort of round. Those actually I like better for slaw. This one can be a bit of a pain to cut properly for slaw. I always end up with too big of strips, but hey, this is what we have, so this is what we're gonna use. Probably my favorite cabbage for slaw is the big conical ones. I am forgetting what they're called right now. Oh, shoot. Anyways, they're really good. I know Morning Glory grows them. They start big and they go into like a nice tip point. They have a lot more sugar than a normal cabbage. So they work really good for slaws because, as I said earlier, I like salty and sweet. So for me, for cabbage, this is how I like to break it down. You guys feel free to do it however you want, but especially for slaws and any sort of like sliced procedure, this is what I like to do. You just sort of find a nice flat point, find a leaf, like a whole leaf, like whatever the top leaf is, which in this case is this side. I'm actually going to take that one off. It's a little rough. There we go. So fine. So in this case, top leaf's here. You can see there's a line. You just follow it back. So you want to have that whole top leaf on one side, and then whatever else on the other side. That way, you have one side that's basically nice and whole and together, and the other one maybe has a piece that's sort of cut in half. But that's how I like to sort of break it down the first way. And you want to get this core out. You can eat it. You can eat pretty much everything on cabbage, but it's not so good for slaw because we're going to be eating it raw. So you could sort of cut it in like this. I've done this a lot. If I was trying to, again, I know I'm like cutting towards myself. I've done this a lot. Do what you feel comfortable with. This is definitely more dangerous, but I find it really nice to sort of cut the core out. The way you do that, you just sort of angle in on this side, angle in on this side, and it comes right out. The problem with that is that I'm going to cut this in half anyways because of the way I'm going to cut my slaw. So since I'm doing that anyways, I actually find an easier way to core is to go ahead and cut it in half. And then I don't know if you ever did this or had somebody do it to you when you were a kid, cutting the seeds out of apples this way. You just want to sort of do that same procedure. You want to come in there and cut it at an angle like that, and you can cut the core right out as well that way. And it's much safer that way too, which is really nice if you don't feel comfortable cutting towards yourself or cutting while things are in the air. Because you have a nice pad, your hand's way away from the knife. You can press down and get some good force into your knife without having to worry about things slipping all over the place. And so I'm composting on my discards. That's why my hand keeps going over the top. But feel free to do whatever you like with them. So this is one of the problems with this is it's such a big and wide cabbage that at this stage now, I almost feel like this is too big. Because what I want to do is I want to cut it this way. And that'll make me eat lots of thin strips, but this I think is too big. So I'm actually gonna cut this into eighths, and then and that's gonna make it so I have nice small strips, and they'll actually fit in my mouth. I don't have to like slurp them up like pasta. I'm actually gonna set a timer for this chicken. Let's just do 15 minutes. I think that's probably enough. Take a quick peek. Oh yeah, that's looking really good. Looking really good. And so so I have those in eighths. I'm just going to stack them up like this. Just for me, I like to save time. You can do them one at a time too. And you really just want to start at the tip. You want to cut them as thin as you possibly can. And again, with my fingers, I'm just sort of curling them under. If you've ever sort of seen a lot of professional chefs, they do that. That way you can sort of put your knife right on your knuckles and you're not going to hit anything. It's helpful for a guide. It's not essential. You can just don't do that. It's really dangerous. You can put your fingers out a little bit, just keep them away from the knife. But knife safety is so important to keeping everyone safe in the kitchen. And having a sharp knife is probably the most important part of knife safety. You think it would be more dangerous with a sharp knife, but goodness gracious, a sharp knife is one of the safest things in the world. It's dull knives you have to worry about. They do weird things. They slip up, they hit things that a sharp knife would just go right through, and they sort of deflect all over the place. And so we're just going to try and cut those as thin as we can. I'm not the best at cutting cabbage thin. I actually kind of like it to have bites, so it's okay. And we're just going to cut that up, and we're going to transfer it to a bowl. And for me, for cabbage, for slaw, I like to salt it as I go. And depending on the slaw, I'll actually drain the liquid off when I'm done. Every time I add a little cabbage, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt on top of it. What that's going to do is first off, it's going to season it so it tastes really good, but it's also going to get the juices moving in that cabbage. And this is a really nice process for if you're like making kimchi or something. You just salt the cabbage, gets all the kimchi liquid out, and then once the kimchi liquid's out, or sorry, the cabbage liquid's out, you use that liquid. You compress the cabbage, and you make that liquid be a seal against oxygen, and that keeps oxygen out of the physical cabbage product, which allows you to do the anaerobic, which means without oxygen, without air rather, fermentation. That is what gives that kimchi and that sauerkraut that beautiful sour lactic acid from the lacto fermentation. So this one I'm going to do big just because maybe give it a little extra texture just to sort of see. Those other ones actually seemed a lot smaller than I expected. So, and one of the cool things about cutting that core out like that is it actually gives you a really nice stable base to cut on. So I'm going to cut this a little bit longer, and I'm just going to try and cut it thinner. So they're going to be nice and thin and long. And we'll see how that turns out, see if I like it or not. I think it's already getting too long. So now that we're towards the end, I'm just going to flip it down, cut it in half, and keep cutting. And I'm going to make a lot of slaw right now, probably much more than you're ever going to need. But this is something that I tend to do every time I cook, is just make far too much food. I really like leftovers. I like using leftovers in different things. I could take this same slaw here and eat it with tacos 2 nights from now, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So I usually like to over prepare for things instead of being sad that I didn't make quite enough. This is a lot of cabbage though. And that's okay. It's going to shrink down a little bit once that salt starts to go. Once it gets dressed, it will wilt and take up a lot less space. So if you don't have a big bowl, you can work in batches. But, this is really good cabbage. I just crunched on some. Occasionally get big chunks like that. Don't really work for slaw, so it's snack time. So I think I'm going to do this the same way I did the first one. And again, I feel comfortable doing this. You can do it one at a time, but I've done this a lot of times. And I'm really not trying for anything super fancy, so I'm okay if I don't cut it perfectly. But if you want to be more fancy, cut the cabbage into smaller pieces, easier to deal with, and it just takes more time. But while I do enjoy going slow and taking my time with my food, I also really like being done and getting food in my mouth. I'm an eater well before I am a cook, and food is one of my greatest loves. So I'm actually going to stop. I'm going to save this last quarter for something else. Maybe I'll do a little cabbage with tomatoes or something like that. I just have way too much cabbage right now. Beautiful. Quick little cleanup. All right, so cabbage is done. I'm just going to add a couple other pieces to the slaw, sort of make it nice and tasty. Take a little break set from my beverage. So for me, cabbage, like I said, I like more crunchy things. The slaw is eventually, the cabbage itself rather, is eventually going to 80 pounds of kimchi. Yeah, seriously. Hisby, oh, thank you for the pointed cabbage. So I really like crunchy things in my slaw. So because the cabbage is going to wilt eventually, maybe like two or 3 days down the line, I'm having it as a leftover. My cabbage is going to be kind of a mess. But some of the other vegetables, like my onions, definitely my fennel, my pepper, they're going to have a little bit more crunch to them. So I like to add a little bit of extra crunchy things in there. It helps add some flavor, some color, which is, ooh, that's unfortunate. So my pepper's got a little bit of a moldy seed sac, which is totally fine. That mold shouldn't have spread. I'll just take a quick little peek. It's just from a local farm, so I'm really not that concerned about it. If I had bought this from, like Mexico or something, I probably wouldn't be using it. But that mold is not going to hurt anybody. It's on the seeds specifically, and you can just do a quick spot check. And there's no mold on the actual flesh, so it's fine. It happens a lot. Usually there's like a small hole maybe in the outside of the pepper, and so so a little bit of spores get in there. But the seeds always seem to go first, and I don't really know why that is. But the flesh is fine, which so I'm going to keep using it. And so what I did there, I should have told you guys when I was doing it, is you want to sort of find a flat side of your pepper. You want to cut down along that flat side, and you just want to spin the pepper as you go, sort of try and cut around the seed pouch. And what that does is it lets you basically take all the flesh off without a big messy cleanup of seeds. I really like it. If you have any chickens, they absolutely love those. They will destroy them. Obviously, don't give them one with mold. So I'm just going to cut these as thin as I possibly can. I like thin strips of peppers. They're going to really go with the slaw pretty well. But again, you could cut these into cubes if you wanted to. I mean, you could do a cube slaw. You don't have to cut strips for your slaw. You could do slaw in the Cuisinart or the food processor and do like a completely just blitzed slaw that's just basically tiny little pieces with a really nice dressing. Nothing wrong with that. I just really tend to like chewing a lot of my food. I love the mouthfeel of things, so I like nice big chunks, long strips, stuff like that. That gives me a little bit of trouble eating, you know. And so this is really just for color and a little bit of flavor. So I'm not too worried that I have so much cabbage and really not that much peppers. Once we mix it up, it's actually going to come through really nice, and it's going to taste really, really good. I like red peppers for this specifically because they're sweeter. Most of the peppers don't really taste like anything. Yellows and oranges start to get there, but reds have the deepest pepper flavor, and that's why I usually use them for things like this. Also, they're just pretty. All right, so onions. Not many people, not everyone I should say, likes raw onions in their slaw. I am absolutely in love with onions and alliums in general. So I'm going to put raw onion in my slaw. I just cut the top and bottom off of those and then put it on the flat edge, cut it in half. And it just makes it really easy to peel. Most applications for onions, that's what you're going to want to do. Like earlier when we were doing those shallots, you might want to leave the root end on. If you want to do a really small dice on your onions, it works the exact same for them. You can sort of come in from the side like this, cut the different leaves into small pieces, and then that way, you'll have nice diced onions. But for me, I want long strips again. So there's two different ways to do long strips. You can cut them this way along the grain, but then you're going to have short ones and long ones. And that's not really conducive to how I like my food to look. I like things to look maybe rustic, but to some degree all the same. So what I'm going to do, and the best way to get all the same pieces, is you want to cut along it this way. You want to actually tilt your knife. Yeah, you can see that. You want to tilt your knife and go along with the ridges as you go. What that's going to do is it's going to give you nice long strips that are all the same. Because even when you're cutting that tiny little piece in the center of the onion, it's still going to be the exact same length as the other pieces. Where if you cut it the other way, you end up with those little tiny pieces from the center, and everything else is super long. So if you look at this, even towards the center, you're still getting pieces that are pretty long. Whereas if I cut that the other way, I would have had a tiny little half moon. So that's what I like to do for cutting my onions. Again, a chopped slaw would be perfectly acceptable in this case, if you just wanted to cut them kind of how we did the shallots earlier. But that's really up to your flavor preference. And you definitely don't even have to use onions. You could literally just make this slaw with cabbage. Use some red cabbage and some normal cabbage. That'll get you some good colors in there. That's totally up to you. Though I wouldn't change the dressing too much. I really, really like this dressing. It's sweet and it's thick, and it just goes really well. And again, I'm using yogurt, but if you have mayonnaise, we're not really a very mayonnaise-centric house here. If you have mayonnaise, by all means, use mayonnaise instead of yogurt for this dressing. It really is going to turn out a lot better. Just like with the cabbage, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over those peppers and onions, start getting the juices moving, start helping them to flavor the slaw. So the last bit here we're going to do, well, actually there's going to be some garlic in there too. Again, I really like alliums, so I'm not afraid to put raw garlic in my slaw. But if you don't like raw garlic, do not put it in. It's incredibly intense. It's super spicy. But specifically with this dish, it's gonna bring a nice little sweetness and spiciness that I think is gonna bring everything together. And I don't mind about my breath smelling like raw garlic. So, all right, cool. So fennel can sometimes have a little bit of dirt in it. This one did, so I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. Similar to leeks, the way it grows, they sort of grow upwards in sheaths. And so when that happens, they can sort of capture sand in there. So we're just going to try and shove these back together. And you can already smell, this is some fresh fennel I got from my my CSA, and it just smells so good. It's so anisey. And we're not going to have enough in here really for that anise flavor to come through super strong. I think it's really going to add more crunch than anything else. And you know, it'll have a little bit of sweetness, but I don't think I'm not really too worried about it tasting too much like anise, or anise, I guess is the way most people say it. So yeah, so these I'm just going to cut them sort of lengthwise like this, just like I would basically if it was an onion. You basically want to treat the bulb of the fennel a lot like the bulb of an onion if you can. They're really hard to cut. They're definitely not as easy as onions. And so for these, I'm actually just I cut them in half like that. And I'm just going to cut nice thin pieces off of these. They're not going to be perfectly symmetrical and everything, but I think that's going to be just fine. And as I get to the stem, they're just going to keep on cutting. The first bit of the stem is a little tough, but if I cut it nice and thin, it shouldn't be problematic. And it'll stay nice and crispy, almost like a celery when I put it in the slaw, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I want something to keep my slaw nice and crispy, so that a couple days down the line here, when I make some nachos or some tacos, it's still acceptable and I can still use it. Weirdly, I'm crying from cutting the fennel, not from cutting the onions. That's intense. Actually, you know what it is? It's probably because I salted the onions and they are just releasing all of their chemicals. Cool, so that's the fennel. Got the stems up here. They look, you know, it's kind of like a green onion almost. And then the fennel bulb is now basically looks a lot like our onion. It's just little strips. It's beautiful. Super tasty. Fennel is an amazing vegetable. If you guys don't use it often, you see it at the supermarket and you're like, what's that? Grab some, try it out. Put it in salads, put it in roasts. Goes really good with any roast chicken. And we could easily have just put fennel in that dish instead of shallots. It would have turned out just as good. Just would have tasted more like fennel. All right, cool. So that's all of our slaw ingredients. I don't know how I'm going to mix them in this bowl. I might have to find a bigger bowl. We're going to let that hang out, and we are going to make our dressing. So I don't really measure things very well. We're just going to kind of go. We're going to start with a base. So in this case, it's going to be 1 clove of garlic. That's my base. I know that garlic can be really spicy. So here, what you're going to do with the garlic like that, the best way to get it off is just put your knife or your flat of your palm and just push, and it'll crack like that. And when it's cracked, it's really easy to peel first off, but it releases a lot of chemicals in the garlic that make all of the energy and vitamins in it much more bioavailable. It's a defense mechanism of the garlic. So when you crush it like that, it not only makes it easier to chop up, but it also makes it better for you. And we're just going to chop this basically as tiny as you can. You don't want to have tons of huge chunks of raw garlic. I honestly don't mind. I would probably eat that garlic whole if you give me the opportunity. But most people are not super stoked about getting a big chunk of garlic in their mouth. So you want to cut it up real nice, get a nice little pile, and I'll actually like to smush it again. Nice. All right. So that's a 15-minute timer for the chicken. The chicken can take upwards of 20 minutes. I actually have a thermometer here, so I'm going to take a quick peek at the breast and just see what our temperature's at. We're looking for probably like 155, 160. It is going to cook plenty with carryover cooking, so I'm not too worried about getting to that 165 that is sort of required by health. But and again, this chicken is in really good shape, so I'm not too worried about it. Looks really nice. I can tell it's going to want some more time though. Just looking at the grapes, they're not really done yet. My chicken's about 130. I'm gonna let that go, and I think it probably just needs about 5-10 more minutes. Again, I just checked the biggest piece. If you were just cooking thighs, for instance, I bet you that'd be done right now, but those breasts definitely are going to need some more time. So let's do 7 minutes, and we'll check on it again. We still got plenty to do in the meantime, so it's perfectly okay. So I like to crush that garlic again. Again, it just sort of gets all the juices flowing, and it makes it really sticky, so it sticks together. It makes it easier to chop up nice and small. All right, cool. So that's my chopped garlic. It's my first ingredient for my sauce for the slaw. Oops, I lost them. All right, cool. So next thing we want is a little bit of maple syrup. And you can use honey, you can use brown sugar, you can use pretty much anything, but I happen to have a lot of maple syrup. So I'm gonna add, let's say 2 tablespoons maybe. For me, it's just gonna be enough to sort of cover up the garlic. You know, that's a lot of cabbage. Let's go like a 1/4 cup. So a 1/4 cup is about 4 tablespoons. And we can always add more. That's the beauty of having your mise en place right in front of you, is if you don't like the way something tastes, you can change it. So we got some maple syrup. We're gonna put about 1 tablespoon of lime juice in there. I'm gonna put some apple cider vinegar in. So the lime is really just for like a little bit of citrus flavor, but the main acid is gonna come from this apple cider vinegar. So I'll probably do 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon of the lime juice. Like I said, got some horseradish. Oh yeah, that's really good. I like pretty much any type of horseradish you can get. If you got fresh horseradish, you're probably going to want to use less. If you don't like horseradish, just don't use horseradish. But I'm going to use about 1 tablespoon of horseradish. Put it on in there, maybe 1.5 tablespoons. So these are our liquids. We're just going to give those a big stir. Hit it with a little bit of salt. Again, the cabbage is salted too, so it shouldn't need too much, but just helps to get that garlic to release its juices. And all that acid is also sort of cooking the garlic right now, helping to sort of curb that really intense bite that it has. Stir, stir, stir. Get it looking real nice. And it doesn't look super pretty right now. I don't know if you can see that, but I bet you it tastes really good. So we're just going to get a little bit of that liquid and just see what it looks like. Nice, nice. So it's sweet. It's actually could use a little bit more vinegar. Oh, it's really good though. Actually, you know what? It's perfect. I don't want it to be too acidic. It's nice and sweet. The horseradish is coming through really, really good. I could just like taste it, but it's not super aggressive. The sweetness and the sour has really sort of brought it all down. And then I'm gonna finish this off with some yogurt. Like I said, you can use, oh whoops, it's just like non-fat yogurt. Full fat yogurt would be better, but this is what I had. I don't have any anything else. It's just helpful to have a little bit of protein to sort of mix in with this. It just gives it a better texture. Helps it to stick to the cabbage, so you're not dealing with just like a pool of liquid at the bottom. Having a little bit of protein in there, it just makes it a better dressing. And so I probably put about 1/2 cup of yogurt or mayonnaise in this case. And I think I'm actually going to salt it a bit more because again, mayonnaise would have been salted, but this yogurt is definitely not salted. So I'm going to put a little salt in there. That'll help to sort of help us to emulate that mayonnaise, which is what we're really trying to do here. All right, cool. That looks good to me. This is going to be a rather light dressing. I don't think it's going to be super thick. You know, really the slaw is going to be more about the vegetables and less about the dressing. But the dressing is going to help sort of bring it all together and make that something super tasty. I'll take a quick taste of that. That's perfect. So the yogurt's really acidic. Goes really, really good with the lime and the horseradish. It's all coming together with their different sort of sours and bitters and flavors all over the place. I'm a big fan of that. I just made that up for tonight. I'm real excited about it. I mean, obviously somebody's done that before, but I just sort of threw that together and I'm very happy about it. All right, so let's wipe this down, get a nice little dry board. Anytime you're doing herbs, you want to try and keep it as dry as possible so they don't stick. We're going to get some rosemary together. Give it a smell if you want to. Give it a taste. Rosemary is not all the same. There's different types. Some can be a lot more bitter. Some can be a lot sweeter. This doesn't taste really intense, so I think I'm going to use 2 sprigs. I think the thing said 2 tablespoons, but I will go 3 sprigs. We got quite a lot of chicken, and I'm definitely going to make more sauce than normal, so I'm going to go 3 sprigs. And I'll keep it out just in case I want to add more later. All right, so best way to get herbs, you may have seen this before, but you want to get them off the stem most of the time. Cilantro, you usually don't have to. The cilantro stem is actually really tasty, so you can just chop it right up with your herbs. Most of the time, you want to remove the leaves from the stem. And the best way to do that is to hold it up at the tip of the stem. And you want to sort of make a little grabber with your fingers. You just want to gently find the stem with that grabber. And looks like I pulled too much off the tip. Get a nice grip on the tip, nice gentle grip. You're going to want to use that little grabber. And you're just going to pull gently down the stem, and they should all pluck off. And the reason that's working is because you're sort of working against their natural inclination to stay up. So they should slip off pretty easy. If they don't, you can come back on and get it. And some herbs work better than this. Works really well for thyme. It does work for rosemary, but this rosemary is very thick and sticky, so it's not picking perfectly. But you can eat rosemary stems too. Herbs in general are fully edible. They're really, really great. So we're going to try that again. Just do your sort of grippy hand, and you pull right off, pull all those little leaves off. The leaves are where most of the oils and the flavor is. Obviously, some herbs and spices, or rather spices, use the stems itself for the spice. So that one was perfect. Look at that. It just came out right off. Give it a practice. It actually works really well for things like kale as well. Sort of starting at the tip, and except with kale, you want to start at the stem, and you want to use the bottom of your hand. And you want to sort of pull it down. I actually got a piece of kale. Let me show you a little trick. So some of you guys have seen this before. This is kale. So there's the stem, there's the leaves, and just like what we've been doing with these herbs, it's a very similar process. You want to grasp the stem nice and strong. You want to sort of make a little cup with your hand like that, and then you just want to pull on the stem, and you want to use your pinky. Your pinky is what's holding tight against the stem. The rest is just grabbing these leaves as they come off, and you want to pull. You get a stem, and then you get leaves. Try that next time you're messing with kale. It's a really, really nice technique. Make like a massaged kale salad. You can just take that, rip up the kale, put a little salt on it, a little oil, and just massage it. The kale turns this dark color, and you can just eat it right away. It's perfect. All right, so the timer went off. I bet you my chicken is done. Let's take a quick peek. Oh yeah, that's looking real good. Again, I'm just going to check the breasts. These are my my largest. We're so close. I'm just going to do it for a couple more minutes. Just want to make sure those breasts are done. And we don't really have to worry about overcooking our thighs or our wings, because they're all dark meat. They've got a lot of bones around and protecting them. But those breasts, you want to be perfect. So the breast is really what you want to pay attention to. So the rosemary now, you want to try and get all the stems going the same way. If you can, it's just going to make it easier to chop them. Get them up in a nice pile, nice and tight. And then you're just going to try and come through here and cut them as small as you can. Cutting herbs is not my specialty, but it really just helps to bring everything together. So you just want to try and focus on making as small cuts as you can. Rosemary is really nice. Not all herbs are nice like this, but it's fairly strong. It doesn't really have a lot of moisture content, so it won't stick itself to your board, which can be really a pain if you're trying to like dice parsley, for instance. But rosemary is pretty dry as far as herbs go, rather. So you can usually get a pretty good chop. You're just trying to get it nice and small, so you don't have giant pieces of rosemary you're picking out with your teeth. Some people like that. Some people don't. Totally up to you. Some people absolutely hate rosemary in the first place. In which case, just don't use it. Use something else. Marjoram could be really good. You could just totally flip the dish entirely and do something like cumin in there. I mean, there's a lot of different options. You certainly don't have to use rosemary at all. The dish has plenty of flavors without the rosemary being involved. All right, cool. So that is ready for when this chicken comes out. We want to make our pan sauce. I got my broth. I got my wine. I'm going to use these basically as a whisk. It's going to really help. And I think all we have to do is make that pan sauce and then dress our slaw, and we are done. So I'm going to put some stuff away as I'm waiting for that chicken to just finish. Now would be a good time for questions if anybody had any that I missed. If you have any right now you want to ask, pop them in the chat. I'm going to take a peek, see what we got. That is a yellow onion, by the way. I usually just use whatever onions are on sale, but you can't use a raw onion. I like intense onion flavors, but for raw onion, Vidalias are usually sort of the go-to, just because they're nice and sweet. They don't have as much intense flavors. So I don't even think I have a bowl that's bigger than this. So we're just going to make this work. It's already gotten a little bit softer. I gonna do? Well, I got a good plan. I'll be right back, guys.
While Chris is doing what he needs to do, I'm going to give you some wine pairings for this dish. I've made this dish a number of times, and I would recommend a Cabernet Franc from the Loire Valley, if you can find one of those. That's a medium to light-bodied wine. Gamay works very well. If you want something a little more body to it, a Sangiovese is very, very nice with this. The last time I had this with my husband, we had the Cabernet Franc, and it was really excellent. So
Nice.
very jealous, Chris.
I'm not the best at wine, so that is perfection, Virginia. Thank you.
Sure.
I found an old Cambro. It's a really big 16 quart storage container. One of the benefits of working in kitchens for so long is I feel like every professional chef has taken one of these home with themselves or had gifted an older one or something of that sort. This one I actually got for making soups for the school programs at the libraries. There's a really nice program going on at the West Tisbury Library. I don't think it's going on right now, obviously with COVID, but when there were school vacations, they would provide school lunches. And in this case, it was just a community thing, so anybody could come. So I made a couple soups for them last year. It was really fun. And that's why I have this Cambro. But right now it's making perfect slaw mixer. So mixing that up, I'm just gonna take a quick taste. You want it to taste good when it's raw, with no dressing. Have plenty of salt. That way you can make sure the dressing tastes good, make sure the salad tastes good. And when you put them together, they're just going to taste better. If you don't salt the salad, and when you put the dressing in there, you're going to lose the dressing. You're just going to taste the vegetables. So you want to make sure the vegetables are seasoned and that your sauce is seasoned. And then when you put them all together, you get something that's greater than the two parts. Before we go any further, though, I'm going to take that chicken out of the oven because I think it's done. I'm just going to put this aside. This doesn't really need to be dressed. I mean, it just needs to get stirred really. So we'll do that sort of our last step. But let's take a peek at this chicken. Oh, yeah. All right, that is what I'm talking about. Turn that oven up, get ready to make the pan sauce. Everything's nice. So as you can see, everything is nice and crispy. The grapes have started to cook and they're basically have released a lot of their juices into the bottom of the pan. So what we're going to do is we're just going to load everything back onto that tray that I cleaned earlier. Just let it rest for now. Nice. Oh man, this smells so good. Seriously though, I know they always, Emerald always used to joke about smell-o-vision, but it's really one of those things that just I am very excited for them to actually come up with. All right, cool. So I'm gonna let that just hang out for a second. Let the liquid come up with the actual solids in there. That is not how the recipe says to do it, but I like to get them a little bit more cooked, and then we'll take them out. And what we'll do is we'll just spoon them over the chicken, and that will help to sort of flavor the chicken more. They'll make a nice little heated sort of blanket for the chicken. It'll help them finish cooking and really meld those flavors together perfectly. So I'm using a slotted spoon because I don't want to lose any of those delicious pan juices. And that juice is mostly from the shallots and the grapes and then the chicken. The chicken, like bones and stuff, have started to render down a little bit and release some of their juices as well, and a lot of the fats as well. So it's almost like a gravy, basically. And that's basically what we're going to make over here. We're gonna add some more liquid to it to really double down on that flavor. We're going to do some chicken broth and then wine, because wine is just a fabulous cooking ingredient. If you don't like wine, you can just skip it entirely. You could use beer. You could use just more chicken broth. If you do use more chicken broth, I would put maybe a tablespoon or two of, you don't have to get all the solids. It's actually totally okay if you leave a bit of shallots in there. They are Really, really good for just adding more flavor. But if you don't use the wine, make sure you add a little bit of vinegar in there because the wine does have some acid, especially once it gets cooked down. So we're gonna turn this up pretty high because we're just trying to reduce it. I'm gonna add about a half cup of wine. I just had a little bit left in this from last time I had some wine at home, but I think that's a little less than half a cup. So I'm actually gonna put a little extra chicken broth, and I really like to put extra in here anyways, just because this is such a delicious sauce that I don't want it to ever end. So I like to make way more than I'm supposed to. So we're just going to scrape the bottom of that pan. It's already sort of cooked off while it was in the oven. The liquids in there were already bubbling away, and they cooked off most of the fond. It's called the fond, is what it's called. And that's the brown spots that you get on the bottom of a pan when you're cooking sweet vegetables or meat. The Maillard reaction is when the proteins sort of get all of that delicious caramelization, and that all gets stuck to the bottom of the pan. And you want to get that in. It's really important for like soups and such. You want to get that off. And so when you do what's called a deglazing the pan, in this case, we didn't have to do that. You didn't have to use like a high heat to make a sauce. That all sort of happened in the oven for us. But you want to still make sure and scrape. Make sure you got all that flavor off the bottom of the pan. That fond is so essential to good soups and good flavors, and in this case, a good sauce. I feel like deglazing pans is probably the only like violent part of sauce making. Most of the time, it's very laid back, kind of like what we're doing right now with this gravy basically that we're making. And so we're just gonna let this go to town. I'll turn it up a little more. It's still, there we go. It's starting to simmer. We're just gonna let it reduce. We want it to reduce by about half, and it's gonna thicken up a good amount and get really nice. And that'll let us. I'm gonna put a little more broth in. Once it gets nice and thick, we can sort of spoon it over the top of the chicken, and it'll make our dish absolutely perfect. We're looking pretty good on time too. Awesome. Thinks things are going to come together. So while that's starting to reduce, I'm just going to clean up the best I can. Got a nice chicken fat shine on my nice cooktop here. Keep that well seasoned with my chicken fat. It's the best polish in the world. And just the smell. And that's pretty much it for this. You're going to basically just serve it on that same dish, just like this. So actually, there's a little bit of juice. Let's see if we can get those out of there. Perfect. There's just a little bit of juice that collected in the bottom of the pan, so I just put it back in with our sauce that we're trying to reduce, and let it go to town. I'm just going to move you over there so you can kind of see what that looks like. You want it to go pretty hard. You want a nice little boil. You want to see that smoke or that steam coming off the top. That's telling you that it's evaporating that liquid and getting us to a good place where we can get it thickened and ready to go on our meal. And I mean, realistically, it's probably, you could just eat it right now. Just take a spoon to it, see what it tastes like. Oh man, that's really good. So it's even just at this stage, it's really tasty, but it's not as intense as we want it, which is why we're reducing it. It's going to take that and turn it from like a really tasty broth into a super intense sauce. It's going to be really good at sort of for flavoring our chicken. I mean, that chicken doesn't need any more flavor. It's already absorbed all of that, but it's really nice to have a little extra. If you want to have some toast with your dinner or a nice roll or whatever, it's nice to have something to sort of dip it in. I'm just going to finish mixing up the slaw. I definitely had way more cabbage than I expected. It's always funny with cabbages. You cut them up and they just turn into way more food than you ever expected in that little complex, sort of compact head. It's another reason why cabbages are so great. Lots and lots of food trapped in a tiny little container. So this looks like it's a pretty good mix. And again, it's not going to look like it's heavily dressed. You really don't need, you don't want to have like a really thick dressing on this. You just want something to sort of pop, make those vegetables sort of taste a little bit fresh and new. I really like horseradish with my cabbage. Sometimes I feel like I'll get a cabbage that will almost have like a horseradish flavor to it. I don't know if that's ever happened to you guys. Sometimes I feel like I'm sitting in the fridge too long. They tend to get a little like almost spicy for a brassica. And so I really feel like horseradish brings out that flavor in them. Oh yeah, that's good. So again, it's really simple. Just tastes like cabbage. It's a little sweet. Got a really nice horseradish finish, and the touch of lime and apple cider vinegar is really just to sort of give it a little bit of excitement for your mouth. You're not really necessarily going to taste the lime and the vinegar super strongly, because you do have a lot of base flavors going on with just the cabbage. But it's really going to just sort of make it. And that's way too much slaw, as you can see. But it's really good, so I don't think it's going to last that long. I actually want another piece right now. Top notch. All right, so our sauce is going to town. It's reduced about a third, maybe. And if you're in a rush, or if you really like the flavor of the stock the way it is, you can always do like a cornstarch slurry or a flour slurry. Just put a little bit of flour and water together, almost like you were doing like a turkey gravy, and it'll thicken it up real quick. We're not going to do that, just because I think this is going to turn out just fine. But if you want it to be a lot thicker, if you want it to be something more like a dipping sauce, you can do that. And so the recipe that we posted says to put the rosemary on at the end. Depending on how you like rosemary, you might not like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of do like a half and half. I'm going to put some rosemary on right now. I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top. And then when I stir this, I'm actually going to pour the sauce over the top, and that's going to sort of cook the rosemary a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of raw rosemary, hence why I'm doing this. And then I'm actually going to put the rest of the rosemary right in the sauce right now. Sauce is about like halfway done with the cooking we're going to do to it. So I want to give that rosemary some time to sort of infuse its oils into that sauce and make it really, really nice and tasty. And we're just going to let it go. Reduce, reduce, reduce. And you could reduce this more than half. You could just like go down to just like a tablespoon of intense grapey flavor. That's up to you. That's kind of what you want to do. Let me move you guys a little bit closer so you can sort of check out the action here. Beautiful. This is the best part, the cleanup part, the relaxing, get your kitchen back to the way it looked before you made a huge mess of it. I'm an expert at making messes in the kitchen. I'm also an expert at making delicious food in the kitchen, so it's usually worth the mess. But there's been a couple times where I've sort of came back to the kitchen after eating and been like, what did I do? what happened? And I think part of that comes from a professional cooking background. It's really helpful when you sort of just have to cook and then you clean at the end of the night. But when you're at home, cleaning is usually a good idea to do every single day. So it gets a little more intense. But let me take a peek down here, see if we got any more questions. That is plain yogurt. You could definitely use Greek yogurt. That's just what I had on hand. Yeah, exactly, Virginia. That's what I'm saying. It's definitely, it's even in the comments on that that website that we linked to you guys. It's cooking the rosemary, I think, just makes it a lot better. Rosemary is good and all, don't get me wrong, but raw rosemary is just not, it's not as good as cooked rosemary. Cooked rosemary has just like a lot more going on for it. So we're just gonna take another peek here. And when you're reducing a sauce like this, you're basically looking for how it responds. When it's really liquid, you're gonna be able to stir it and it's gonna respond like water. But as it starts to thicken, it's gonna almost like act like it's sluggish. Like you're gonna push it around and it's gonna sort of act more like a gravy. It's thicker. You can see it start to stick to your spoon and stuff like that. And we're getting pretty close here right now, actually. And in this case, because of the fat that's in there, the water is gonna start getting out of the process. And as the water is removed from the process, the fat concentration is going to increase. And so the sauce is going to start getting opaque. It's going to go from like a thin, brothy looking sauce to like a thick, almost like white sauce. You can see, I can see, I don't know if you guys can see. Here, let me bring you some. It's gotten a lot more cloudy, and that's because all of those bone pieces, the fat and the marrow that's come out has started. I don't want to get too close to my computer. hopefully you guys can see the color on that. Has started to sort of coagulate together in a really nice opaque broth, and it almost looks like it's been sort of like whitewashed. And that's how you know you're starting to get close. You see a similar thing if you've ever cooked a dish that asks you to mount butter to the dish. You slowly add your butter to the broth, and it starts to get that same sort of cloudy white look, and that's how you know that you're doing it right. Basically, it means that the fat is getting incorporated, emulsified into the sauce. Excuse me, as opposed to being like a separate thing. Because fat and water usually don't like each other. So when you boil off the water like this, the fat starts attaching to all the little particles that are in the water, and that's how you get a nice emulsified sauce. And so I could probably go a little bit longer on this, but I think that is done. I think I'm going to call that done. It's nice. It's definitely a little thicker. It doesn't have to be super thick. You don't have to think about like Thanksgiving gravy here. You just want something here. I'm just going to sort of show you. It's going to pour like liquid, but if you look at sort of the back of the spoon here, it's fairly thick. It's not super hot. Oh, it tastes really good. You can taste it too. So like if you try this at home, taste it when you first start reducing it. It's going to taste really good. You're going to be like, why do I need to do this? Taste it when it's done, and as you go, you'll see that flavor gets more and more intense every single time. And so I just tasted it, and that flavor is perfect. It's where I want sauce to be. You want sauces in general to sort of taste more intense than you'd ever want to actually eat. You want them to be something that sort of require you to have something with them. You don't want a sauce to be eaten like a soup, although I've eaten many sauces like soups, and I have no shame in that. But you don't. That's like generally you want it to be really intense. So that sauce looks really good. I just let it sort of finish cooling down. It is still a little thinner than I think would be perfect, but honestly, I am not concerned. So we're just going to pour it right over the top of this chicken, really get it soaked in that delicious, delicious flavor. Make sure you get every inch of it. Oh yeah. And that is that, my friends. Just going to lay these out. We'll give it a nice little look to them, and then we'll see if we got any more questions before I dive into my delicious dinner. Guys, so there is our fabulous dinner for two. Me and Alexandra are going to eat that all by ourselves. I really like the chicken. I think it's so good. It's so country. You just got a pile of delicious vegetables and fruits and olives, and just like the chicken's in there, you got to go digging in there for yourself. And then for me, slaw is just such a nice thing to eat. So I always have a lot of slaw in hand. So guys, thank you for joining me.
Fantastic, Chris. It looked amazing.
I hope you get a chance to try this. It really is easy. If I made it seem difficult, I was lying the whole time. It is extremely easy. Highly suggest just go buy some chicken thighs. Don't worry about breaking down your own chicken for the first time. If you buy the chicken, it is so fast. It takes like no time at all. And those thighs will take about half the time as that breast did in the oven, and they'll be done in about 15 minutes. So you can really get this in the oven and in your belly within half an hour if you use pre-cut thighs. Highly suggested.
True, and I browned the chicken in the morning, and then when I put it together at night, it just took minutes.
That's a great idea too if you have the time. The chicken.
I knew I wasn't going to have a lot of time that night, and I really wanted to make this because once it's in the oven, it's practically done.
Yeah, exactly, and really like. When you're browning, especially the thighs, when you're browning them in the pan, you're almost cooking them entirely.
Yeah. That was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And I really hope you post, at least send to me the little slaw dressing that you threw together, because that would be really nice to have.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to take pictures of this. I'm going to post it on my food blog, Trash Panda EPL. That's Trash Panda EPL is in Edgartown Public Library. And that's at WordPress or .wordpress.com. Go check it out. I've been posting a lot of stuff, usually pretty regularly, Friday updates, depending on how much takeout I take that week. But this will definitely show up there, and the slaw recipe will be going on there. I actually just made a big batch of salsa verde the other day. So you can expect that this Friday as well. It's going to be a nice saucy week.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. And again, the next Chef Look Cooks is the 19th of November. And Chris will have a great, wonderful program for us then too. And every time, the difference between this and our cooking demos at the library is every time he does one of these, he can show us another technique. So we learned a lot about cutting tonight, and I really appreciate that. And we learned how to cut the chicken, which is really great. It's a really good thing to know. That was great.
Yeah, I still haven't made up my mind. Thank you guys. Thanks for showing up. Let's get one quick more look at the food before we go anywhere. Make you guys ready for dinner. Whoa.
Thanks, Chris.
Whoa. Bye, guys.